one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would take an approval of the agenda if everybody's okay with the order.
So moved. Second.
Bruce made a motion, seconded by Sean. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, the consent agenda. I would take a motion if nobody has any questions on the
So moved?
issues. Okay, Maggie made a motion.
Second.
Bruce seconded it. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. City engineers report, project report update.
Well, I'm gonna just cover that. The only
Okay.
update that we had in there was you guys should have received an email today about the 2024 CIP neighborhood meeting. That will
Yes.
be on January 10th at 6 o'clock at night. So you should have received an email showing the letter that that all residents should be receiving here in the next few days.
Okay, thank you, Matt. All right, the next item is the Southwest Metro Drug Task Force Joint Powers Agreement. Mr. John Howard, Commander. Hello.
Hi there, Mayor, City Council members. I'm John Howard. I'm the current commander of the Southwest Metro Drug Task Force. And I just wanted to put my face in front of you and let you know who we are and what we do a little bit in case you didn't know. We are a multi-jurisdictional organization that focuses mainly on drug trafficking organizations. We get funding from, most of our funding comes from the state. And being multi-jurisdictional gives us the opportunity with staffing and the necessary people and equipment to focus heavily on the drugs that are in our area, which is Scott County, Carver County, and McLeod County. We also do violent crimes. If there's any jurisdiction, organization that has a violent crime that they want our help with, because of our kind of unique ability to have cars that don't have any markings on them. We wear plain clothes. We don't look like cops most of the time. We are able to assist with those investigations and kind of help make those go a little smoother and quicker, be more resources for all those organizations. This year in 2023, we have seized over 3,000 grams of methamphetamine, over 500 grams of cocaine, and over 400 grams of fentanyl. I reference those three because they are our most prevalent right now. Specifically, the fentanyl powder is what we're seeing a big uptick in. And people always ask me, do we see a difference in what we do? Because it's constantly out there and changing. And regardless of how much is out there, if we weren't here doing what we do, it would be 10 times worse. We might not see the day-to-day effects, but when you hear about that one case of a kid, someone you know, a friend that is injured by this, I always like to think that we could have prevented it if we had been in the right place at the right time. So that's pretty much all I got for you guys. You got any questions for me?
Which department are you with then?
I'm a sergeant with Carver County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, with Carver. Okay.
The activity that you mentioned, what was seized, how does that compare with other years? And then also, you mentioned the amounts of drugs, but what's the trend line in the activity of what you're doing? How much?
Yeah. So this year, our numbers are much higher than they were the last couple of years, but it's mostly because of staffing levels. Law enforcement as a general whole around the state, the nation has had a hard time keeping numbers up. And unfortunately, that meant that a lot of agencies had to remove their agents from the task force and bring them back to their home agencies. We are now back to fully staffed. We have 7 agents, 8 including myself. And so that has kind of made that increase just kind of naturally happen, having more people out there doing the work. But again, we're seeing an increase even just in the drug activity itself. The trafficking mostly coming into Minneapolis and then dispersing from Minneapolis out to our areas is getting much worse. It's coming out further and further from the metro area. So we have seen an increase in activity in our area. We still follow it into the metro if we have that ability to once we get them to try and find out where it came from in there, but most of our time is spent in our jurisdiction area trying to prevent it from coming here.
Are you dealing pretty much with that final mile, the dealer, or are you actually dealing with the trafficker that's coming from out in the United States?
So each case is different. A lot of times they'll start with just a small tip, even if it's a tip from the public, from a school that's worried about a kid or whatever it may be, and then we'll start there, and our goal is to work our way up to the people that are coming in. Our organization is very good and has very close relationships with a lot of the federal agencies, so we do get a lot of information on vehicles that are coming into our area, and we try and intercept those as they come in, but it's kind of hit or miss and depends on each case, on who we're dealing with and at what level.
Thank you.
So within those counties, where does New Prague, or within the cities, I should say, that are on the sheet here, what is really the local ramifications? Can you give us a little feedback on that? Are we seeing maybe to Bruce's point, an uptick in New Prague, or is it concentrated in Carver County, or I'm just kind of curious where New Prague sits amongst all these cities that are.
Yeah, so it's kind of all over the board. You know, even in Carver County, where I know the most, you know, Chaska is our kind of main problem area. And when we come to Scott County, it's kind of just spread out all over. I mean, obviously we have our Shakopee and our Par Lakes, and we have agents dedicated to there. And then we have, the nice thing about how Scott County is designed with our task force, having the Scott County agent on, he is dedicated to New Prague, Jordan, and Elko. He covers your guys' area. When we get a tip from New Prague, I know it goes straight to him. And so we have, in Scott County, we have more agents than we have in any other county. So we have that ability to kind of saturate the whole area down here and be very like out there and visible in these jurisdictions. So as far as New Prague goes, recently we've had, can reference at least 3 cases that we dealt with in the last 2 months that were attributed to here. I can't tell you about them because we're still working them, but yeah, we've had 3 different instances where we've been down here in the last couple of months. And it actually works nicely because one of our guys from a different agency actually lives here. So if we do get something, even though he's not the Scott County, we just call him and say, hey, mind checking that out quick?
Great.
So,
Are you seeing more personal use in these substances, or specifically in New Prague, are you seeing it as a dealer?
So we've had both. One of those that I referenced was one of those where a federal agency notified us of some traffickers that were coming to the area and were going to be in the area, and so that's where we got involved then. And I would say 9 times out of 10, it's just the daily users that we're getting tips on from around this area. But no matter where you go, we're always going to have some information that there's somebody that's dealing big quantities or working with somebody else to provide to areas.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, there's an agreement in front of us that we need to approve. How long is this agreement for? For the next 5 years? 4 years?
Yeah, until through 2028, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is a change this year. We were doing every 2 years and keeping it just in line with the state grant, because the state grant is 2 years. But we weren't having any changes made to the agreement for the last 15 years or however long it's been going. So we decided to just make it longer so we didn't have to go through the signing process every 2 years again. And but we have in there that there is the ability to pull it back and make changes when needed.
Mr. Mayor, for your information, it is 5 years.
It is 5, okay.
2024 through 2028, yes.
Well, if there's any further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the Southwest Metro Drug Task Force Joint Powers Agreement.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second it. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Thanks
you
for
your
coming.
time.
Thanks,
I
Jen.
appreciate it.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the public is invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda. Does anybody want to speak to the council? I don't see anybody here. Anybody online? Okay. So with that, I'll move on to the next item that we have. It'd be ordinances for adoption, the second reading of the refuse collection ordinance. I would take a motion to approve the second reading with the changes that were made since the last.
So moved.
Okay, Sean made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Maggie seconded it. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I thought there was something else in there. Oh, that's below. Okay, that's a resolution. Okay. So the next item up is the resolution to approve the 2023 amended city budget that was passed out prior to the meeting, which is basically the updates. Does anybody want to speak to that from staff?
Good evening. I'll just mention a couple things. So there is the memo and the resolution, both outlining in detail what changes were made to the 2023 budget. Overall, it's a net zero change. Revenues and expenditures still balance. Some of the highlights are the purchase of the Parks building, utilizing fund balance reserves for that. So assigning that into the budget, going through our ARPA funds and reconciling some of that. Some things we got in '23 and we originally planned in '22. Some things we did not get this year, and so we adjusted for that. And then a park board adjustment for the sidewalk expansion or maintenance that was planned in '23, but is not occurring this year. So overall, like I said, it's a net zero, but just aligning our actual activity compared to budget.
Okay, any questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve the resolution 23-12-18-01.
So moved.
Bruce made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Maggie seconds. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the next item would be adopting the 2024 city budget.
Yes, so this is the budget that we've been discussing since August this year as a council. In total, this includes all of our funds, general funds, EDA, enterprise funds such as water, wastewater, electric, ambulance, golf, and stormwater. Our special revenues are in there, capital projects funds, and our debt service and construction funds. So we did have our truth and taxation hearing on December 4th, and did not have anyone get up to speak at the budget, at that time. We'd also have our meeting last week where we hopefully put some bows on some things that we've been discussing. So I can certainly field more questions as to the various departments or what they are. But at this point, I'd be looking to approve the city budget for '24. So of note, normally by this point, we would have also adopted the tax levy coming into this. We've all kind of discussed that, and tax levy's update is on the agenda here in a couple items. But we'd be ultimately looking to answer the tax levy question next week on the 27th at a special city council meeting. Instead of this evening, though, we are looking at adopting the city budget. So if there are any questions, I will certainly stand for them.
So these are the numbers as we finally discussed them last week, but you rounded it off to make things balance.
Correct.
I'm assuming.
Yes,
No changes from what we discussed last week.
correct.
Okay, any other,
Before we stop that, did we move anything over from 23 yet that we knew ended up not getting purchased? Okay, so no, there are no changes then from last week's, that we left the meeting with.
So the amended 23 budget that we just got, none of those things are gonna be moved over to the 24 budget?
They have not been, not currently, no.
Most of the amended 23 is actually impacting 23 expenditures, meaning they occurred, like the Parks building happened, we purchased a plow truck. The park board sidewalk of 130,000 did not move over to 2024 right now.
But I believe that one was already in there anyway. We kind of foresaw that one coming a few months ago when we were unsuccessful with the grant.
Was in the 24 budget.
Yes, so we've already talked about that.
Right,
That one's been
okay.
in there since August, I believe. yeah.
Okay, so there's not an addition to?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
and this is kind of laying stuff up so it matches columns also.
Correct.
The amended,
Yes.
yeah.
Right, so we just pulled from other line items to supplement other line items. Is that,
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it was, or when
'Cause it
we
was a
talked,
net-
yeah, when we talked about, the park building.
Yeah.
We'd said, we're gonna use our fund reserves for this, and so that's basically just noting in there that our park budget isn't $1 million over budget, now it's on budget, and we use the revenues from fund balance to, that's what the 23 amendment was.
okay, yeah, right, okay.
Okay, I would take a motion to approve the resolution 231218-2, adopting the 2024 city budget.
So just a clarifying question then, is so if we change things next week, we'll be changing this as well?
Ultimately, if we change anything next week with the tax levy, my plan would be to bring back, an amendment, say in January, to update the books at that point. So, kind of the discussions we'd had last week, we were moving revenues around, compared to expenditures. And so if our revenues get moved a little bit, it shouldn't affect our expenditures. I mean, it could. But then ultimately, we could do a budget amendment next year to bring all those back into line, depending on how the tax levy question goes next week.
So where did we end up with the levy then?
So right now, the levy, as it's shown, is showing the levy from last year, which was the 4.8 million. Though at this point, we have not adopted a formal levy.
Correct. Because we have to wait, well,
Yeah.
Yes.
I know this
Yeah.
year's a little different, so
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure, there's a lot of
no, I hear ya.
weird things to process here.
Yes, there's a lot of weird moving pieces with this. Ultimately, we are looking at adopting the budget before we're adopting the levy. And we could do budget amendments to basically zero things out next year if for some reason, the levy throws things out of whack next week.
The adoption of the levy next week.
Correct.
Throws things out of whack for next year.
Yes.
So next, let's talk about next week then at the special meeting. So what are we actually going to be presented with and what are we gonna discuss?
So next week we'll be, and yeah, this is where, and I can certainly, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like, I can jump ahead and kind of
Yeah, why don't
do the
you?
11A. So, just kind of as an overall tax levy update, last week, the city council, asked that I send a letter off to, the Department of Revenue Commissioner, requesting relief to certify, our levy at 5.1 million-ish as intended, back in September. So, I know the mayor signed that letter and we got it sent off as you all requested. I did get an email back from Commissioner Paul Marquardt. He quickly replied basically that he was aware of the situation and asked that we meet with him. So the mayor and I went up to Department of Revenue on Thursday of last week, and we as along with City Attorney Scott Riggs and Assistant City Attorney Joseph Sathy met with them for probably 45 minutes at least, kind of discussing the situation with where we started, and then why we were asking for relief. Ultimately, the meeting ended stating they'd gather more information, including reaching out to Scott County. I do know they have reached out to Scott County. One of the things that the commissioner told us was that in situations like this, for any sort of relief to be able to happen, the county must be the body who petitions for that relief, not a city. I'm not sure why, but that's just his interpretation of statutes. So I actually put in front of you all the memo and resolution that the county commission will be considering tomorrow, basically stating that this was an administrative error and requesting relief from the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue knows that this could potentially be coming, and so my hope would be that we would hear from them soon after, so hopefully tomorrow at some point, soon after, as to whether we would get any sort of relief on the number that was sent out with the preliminary statements. If for some reason we don't, for whatever reason, we do still have that statute that we discussed earlier, basically falling back on the not certifying a levy at all. Would fall back to last year's levy, which was, as we've discussed, the $4.8 million levy. So, and that number, since that's the number we kind of been working with for the last few weeks, is the one that's currently in the budget for tax levy revenues.
And according to our legal counsel, though, we still thought that we had a leg to stand on, even though what the commissioner said. Is that right? That came from your Zanai's conversation.
Yeah, well,
I just want to make sure that the public understands that too.
Yeah, so I mean, we have multiple options at this point. I think our best case scenario is we get some sort of relief, and whatever that may look like from the commission, because then everything's above board and whatnot. I do know there have been, in terms of, we've discussed just not certifying a levy and reverting to last year's. There has been discussions about whether we would be able to complete certain paperwork that we are required to for the state. But I know, speaking to our legal counsel, they believe that we would be able to complete the paperwork just fine. And I suppose we'd be getting down to a point of where we'd kind of be entering a gray area that I think a lot of people in the state haven't necessarily seen yet. And so best case scenario, we can get relief from the state to move forward. And then we don't have to worry about that gray area that they think we'd be traveling into. Our attorneys think we'd be just fine with the way the statutes are written, but best case scenario, then if no one's arguing about potentially what you're doing, would be that coming down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I wanted to make sure that the public understands. So we feel confident that we will not lose any local government aid. Because there was
Correct, yes.
potential that if we went
Correct.
down a
Well,
certain path, that we could lose 5%.
Yes, yes, and so what I've heard from our attorneys, that they are confident that we have a legal leg to stand on, that we would not lose any LGA over this. Generally, the penalty is if you don't submit your proper paperwork by the end of January, or you submit it late, then that is where you could potentially lose 5%, and that is where our attorneys feel like we could submit the paperwork just fine, so we wouldn't have that problem.
But in a situation that, let's say, the odd circumstance that we were to lose that, we would have to just amend our 24 budget.
We'd amend the 24 budget to reduce.
So we have, all right, I just want to.
Yep.
And we'd have to probably amend a lot more too.
I mean, yeah,
Just
we'd be looking at about $60,000, I believe.
Yeah,
Is our LGA over $1 million this year?
It's almost 1.2.
Okay.
so with that, I entertain a motion to adopt let's see here.
Yes, so we'd be going back to 10A, Resolution 23,
No, 10B, to adopt the 2024 city budget.
So nobody had any other questions to try to lower that below 4.8?
Now that's 4.8 million, that's not a
Yeah,
percentage. So
not
the
percentage.
Right,
percentage
I'm
is
sorry,
zero.
you're right.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's not 4.8. And that's where I get everything confused. I get
You're right,
So. Okay, I'll offer the resolution 23-12-18.02 adopting the 2024 city budget. Is there a second?
Second.
Bruce made a second. Is there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. See, I always get I get the numbers and the percentages mixed up myself.
If we came up with some ideas to shave off some money, we could still do that at the next meeting, is that correct?
So at this point, you guys have now approved the resolution for the 2024 budget. But budget amendments are always possible, I guess, going forward. But the idea of the next meeting was we'd be discussing the tax levy.
Levy based on that.
The levy based on that.
Based on that number. But yeah, we
But
can
we could,
always shave.
theoretically, we could lower that still.
I mean, you could theoretically lower any budget at any point, yes.
Okay. All right. But I guess I'll have a point that I can talk about at that meeting,
Okay.
if I had some ideas. Just to throw it out.
Yeah, that's what's
Yep.
good.
Okay, that's all I want to make sure. I thought that was the case. I just wanted
Yep.
to check.
I think you're absolutely right. Okay, the next resolution is adopting the 2024 official fee schedule, which was presented in the packet. Looked like it was gone through pretty well this year.
I don't really have a presentation, but Bruce did have a couple of things he wanted to point out
Yeah,
from what was in the packet.
yeah, there was something that said that there was gonna be a rate given prior to the meeting or something, right?
Yes, so Mayor and Council, I'd just like to clarify a couple of things or make changes to. I believe it's on page 200, and on the very bottom it says page 7 of 8. Nearly to the bottom of that schedule, there's just a time error in regards to what was put on there. It was actually wrong already last year. Our power supplier changes our on-peak and off-peak billing periods, so that should read the same as the 10 PM to 10 AM. That one should actually read the same as the whole house time of use rate, 8 AM to 10 PM, 10 PM to 8 AM. So need to add the 8 in there in regards to that.
They should match, is what
They
you're
should
saying.
match, correct. And then the very bottom of page 201, which is 8 of 8, in regards to the interest rate for consumer deposits. So when primarily new customers make deposits for their water and electric services, we hold that deposit for 2 years, and we're required by law to pay interest on those deposits. The state doesn't always get us those in a timely manner. We actually did just get them recently. It's gonna be 5.3%. But I would just like the wording to include, based on Minnesota statute and per the Department of Commerce.
Okay.
We'll add that wording in there, so that way, in case it doesn't get to us in a timely manner from year to year, we always gotta base it on the state statute.
So Bruce, I want to just go back to your previous statement on the whole house
Yep.
time of rate. The page number 200 is obscuring those two bottom lines on
Oh, okay.
mine and on Dwayne's,
Yep,
on our online version.
Oh, on the PDF version?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
It is on mine too.
so I'm just curious, could you just reiterate that again? Those numbers will be the same?
The numbers, the rates are the same as far as the KWH rates. It's
Okay.
just the time.
Oh, okay.
The time is
Time
off.
period when that meter switches from one rate to another will be 8 AM to 10 PM, and then 10 PM to 8 AM in the morning.
Okay, all right. So I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, the rates are accurate. It's just the time of that rate.
Okay, it was just that they were obscured, so I just
I was
wanted.
gonna say, I think if you're looking at the PDF version, there is the page number on there, and if
Yeah.
you're looking at the HTML version, it doesn't have. the
Oh,
page number.
okay,
Oh, okay.
So,
gotcha. Any other questions on the fee schedule? You see that we knocked a lot of, looks like stuff that we didn't need on there off.
Bruce, you might have reviewed the water change, but maybe you could just highlight that again, since that's a material change to the way we do
Yes.
business?
So on the water rates, our rate, I'm gonna say off-peak or off-season, non-summer is staying the same as it was in 2023. But during the summer, the months, June through September, that rate will change to the $5.38 per 1,000 gallons. And really, that serves two purposes. One is it meets the mandate set forth by the state to have what's called a conservation incentive rate. In other words, to try to influence customers to conserve water somewhat, and they do that by a pricing point. And so as part of our rate schedule for 2024, instead of raising all rates, at the same, the commission decided to implement a summer usage rate of the 538, and then the non-summer will stay at the $4.39 per 1,000.
So, and that's every year, it just switches.
Yeah, we've actually got it on a schedule, Dwayne, so that it'll vary a little bit each year. We worked on a 4-year plan this year with the rate analysis, so
Okay.
going forward, it'll fluctuate every year. I don't know that I'll recommend the same rates to the commission every year, but some part of that.
Okay. Any other questions? That meter, or that pool fill metered from fire hydrant, is that, I know it says pool fill, but is that different than,
It is what it's, it's,
I was thinking like bulk, when somebody comes in for.
yeah. This one's primarily, we use it when they build new pools and they need them filled up immediately so they don't float out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're close enough to a fire hydrant, they'll string hose or contract will string hose far enough so they can fill them immediately. And then we've got a rate to be reimbursed for that.
Yep.
Quick question, Bruce. And Matt, I think you answered this one time, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but I saw it a few weeks ago. Over by Colburn's, we have like private enterprises filling up off there. They get a metered rate too? I mean, they're paying for that.
They're being charged a bulk rate for filling those, yeah,
Those big, okay,
yes,
okay.
yep, definitely.
Is there any way to monitor that, or how do we,
Well, typically, we do have meters on those.
what do you do? Okay.
Yep, yeah, but this time of the year, when we're worried about meters freezing at night, then we just go on the honor system. We know what that truck holds, and so then we're just having them write that down for us, and that's how it's monitored. So most of those customers that we have doing that are ones that we trust because they've been doing it all season, so we kind of know what they're
Yeah,
consuming.
and it's been weeks since I've seen them, so they're probably
Right.
done this time of year, but.
Yeah.
How many are there? I'm just kind of curious.
You know, it kind of goes, we have these landscaping companies that use it quite a bit, and then we have hydro seeding companies that use a lot of water. So, and they come to New Prague and fill up and then go to the surrounding areas to spread the seed, so.
Okay.
Is your staff involved in it, or do they do that on themselves?
Nope, my staff is involved in setting it up, and then once it's set up, then they're given a key to unlock the lock, and then they can do it on their own.
How do you determine between one vendor and another, how much is being used though? I mean,
They're-
if it's just a constant running meter?
Yeah, and their truck, we know what their truck holds, so they're
Okay.
gonna get billed for the full truck load.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, that's how we do it, and when, they're just on an honor system for that part, they report to us every month.
Okay. Do you guys do any audits at all, ever, just to double check it? I mean,
We'll check on, especially when there's construction projects in the area, because then the engineering firms typically are also counting what those loads are, so we can cross them back and forth.
okay, all right.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, I take a motion to approve that resolution for the official fee schedule for 2024.
So moved.
Okay, Sean made a motion to approve 23-12-18-03. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Maggie seconded it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next item is a resolution authorizing the ordinance that we just approved to be printed by title and summary. I take a motion to approve that. I'll make that motion. I'll make the motion 23-12-18-04 to approve authorization of publication by title and summary of ordinance 346.
I'll second.
And Sean seconded it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We talked about the tax levy, but do you have any more to add in there?
I don't have any more at this point. Like I
Okay.
said, as I learn more information, I'll certainly get it
Yeah,
out to you
because
guys.
really tomorrow, it's
I mean, at this point,
based
yes,
on
we're
this.
waiting on the county commissioners to have their meeting tomorrow morning to see where we go.
Yeah. And I don't think there's gonna be an issue with that.
I have not heard there's an issue, but I guess like anything, you never know until the votes are counted.
That's right. Okay, the next item is the golf management contract.
Yes, so the golf management contract is the same one that was shared with you here a couple weeks ago. Back at its, meeting in October, the board did recommend approval of the golf manager's contract along with its budget. When comparing that budget, that contract to last year, really the major changes are updating dates and then increasing compensation, 6% from 94,500 to 100,170. So, at this point, the golf, for better or for worse, the golf club does seem to be doing better these last couple of years, whether it's contributed to COVID or not. So I guess at this point, I would recommend going forward with the proposed contract.
This is for 2024, right?
Correct.
At what point do we finally do a RFP to try to see what we,
I mean,
What's out there?
we can certainly do that. I believe
because this contract year over year exceeds what we're giving the regular employees for the most part.
generally. I know that, was it earlier this summer? Or was it last summer? I can't remember now, they all run together. I did speak to the board about what the potential cost would be of making that just a full-time position again, instead of a contract employee. And trying to remember those numbers off the top of my head, I think total compensation, so including all benefits, you'd be looking right now somewhere between 120 and 160,000. Was our estimate based off of the current
Yeah.
compensation. So it is still certainly under that, but I do think we are inching closer to what it would cost to have just a city employee over there. There are certainly benefits to that. I know under the current situation, he is a contract employee, so he answers to the contract, basically, and not to myself or other staff members, but
But now he's asking for an assistant that's gonna cost the taxpayers, essentially.
So-
It's coming
so-
out of the golf budget, I realize that, but that's still taxpayer money.
Yep, so I don't know if he's so much asking as it is the golf board was saying they would like to hire a part-time person to do that work. From what I know of the situation, the golf board basically said, we think that as the golf course has gotten busier, over the last few years, that there is the added work, and they believe that the work, could be handled by a part-time employee of 20 to 30 hours a week, which is why they put that in the budget.
I don't know if it's any more, I'll admit over since COVID, the last few years, that golf has had a resurgence. But this contract started back when I got on the council 13 years ago, and additional help was always paid out of the original contract. They weren't asking for anything over and above, just the standard part-time help that was kind of already in place. And now we're, either the company that provides the contract can do the job by themselves, or that should be put in the contract, and then we should be looking at potentially throwing it out there to see what's available and what's realistic and what's for bid. Don't you think? I mean, that would be my idea, or I should ask the council, don't you think? But
Yeah, so I mean, I guess my opinion of it is that when reading through this contract is basically to manage the golf course. It does not really cover any other employees' payments, is how I read the contract. The golf it's really written more, in my mind, reads as the golf manager's contract, not the management of the golf course, well.
That's not initially how it was set up.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's fine, and I guess that's how it's kind of been interpreted at this point. This kind of covers the management of the golf course, and a part-time employee may not necessarily be considered a manager of the golf course, they'd be an employee of the golf course. So, yeah, I know in my discussion, because when we started having these discussions, or I did with the golf board about what it would cost to basically have a golf course director, or whatever that title would actually be, as a city employee instead of a management.
Yeah, I'm not, that's why the council went this direction, was to, in
I'm
lean
saying.
budget times, we didn't need another
Yeah,
director.
but I'm saying so we're having those conversations about what that cost would be. I think that's when the conversations of, well, maybe we look at maintaining the current management structure while, having a part-time employee, basically bring on another part-time employee under the golf course to, do some work, which is how their conversation on this got started.
But, yeah, I agree with Sean, that wasn't the original
Intent.
the intent. It was, they ran it, you know, and they basically, who they needed to manage.
I mean, it would be but it's no different than, I guess, and I'm trying not to take a side on this one way or the other, but when I look at this, a part-time employee would be no different than having, somebody who, oversees the food and beverage over there. Like, is that considered part of the management contract, or is that considered part of the part-time employees? Because we currently pay that out of part-time employees.
Right.
No different than somebody, I guess, who tends the bar. Like, is that part of the management of it, or is that the city part-time employee, where it's currently being done by a part-time city employee?
Right, let's approach it that way then.
Yeah.
Then we're trying to hold down part-time hours to make sure, and if management needs to fill some of those hours, and we're only talking golf is a 6-month program, maybe 7 months if we're lucky. This year and last year, maybe a freak 9-month program, but, now we're looking at the part-time expenses going much higher than any type of revenue increase that we've seen.
But only if we approve that.
Yeah.
Only if we
position,
approve that, right,
Yeah.
right. That's my question, though.
Correct,
So-
yeah, so we estimated, and I think it's into the budget, for just under $30,000 for this position, that they worked in, and the idea would be doing a lot of the office clerical type work.
So then what would the manager be doing? Because that's what the manager's supposed to be doing, is the office.
I mean, I'm assuming like the contract lays out, the manager would be doing the day-to-day management of the entire facility. That's, and again, I'd like to reiterate, this is basically me passing on information from the golf
Right,
course.
yeah.
So, it is them that made this recommendation to have this part-time employee added to staff.
I think the part of it that gets confusing is the things that I think they're talking about. Some of the things they're talking about doing in the part-time positions are things that were understood to be part of the responsibilities of this position.
yeah.
The daily reporting, the cash deposits, which are specifically outlined, daily or month-end reporting, which apparently has been an issue or problem, and that this position was supposed to help with. So that's where it gets kind of muddy, is that is actually supposed to be part of the position, the contract task. So I guess that's where, to me, it's getting kind of muddy there.
But you're right, that the management was supposed to be doing the marketing, filling the ballroom with events, and now we're hiring someone else for the clerical part, which would essentially, I'm gonna think, that's gonna fall underneath.
Which I don't really see that outlined in their scope of services on Exhibit A.
That's what I'm looking for.
So this is what the management would be responsible for, and I don't see anything in here with respect to certain clerical responsibilities.
I'm not sure there are, what kind of clerical things, I don't know that there are clerical tasks there.
I mean, I think that they, from what I've heard, are consider things, whether it's the invoicing, the payroll stuff. I know it's a lot of the day-to-day stuff that they interact with City Hall necessarily per se to information.
So
Which
on
to me are more the
page-
daily reports, but yeah.
Yeah, on page 214 though, yeah, there are the third bullet point, prepare and submit daily reports following each day and prepare cash deposit and deliver to the bank. So, yeah, that would be one clerical. So this part-time person, I mean, before we would even consider it, we would want to see a job description and specifically what that person would be doing to then take some load off of the manager.
Or how it's gonna work. But where do we approve their budget? Or do we just do that with,
We did that with the rest of the budget back on
Okay.
the 24.
okay,
But we still have an opportunity on the 27th.
Again, there's always opportunity to amend a budget at any given time. Amending the golf budget will not affect your tax levy
No.
one way or the other, because other than the transfer, it is not supported by levies at all.
The position still has to be approved at the time
Yes.
you
Correct.
take walk.
Correct, that's what I was getting
That's
at.
what you're-
Just isn't it automatic, it's just in the budget. Okay,
And like I said, and I've sent you a separate email about the financial aspect of the golf course, and they had a profitable year before last, but they're not at profit, and they are leveraged more. So there's a certain economies of scale that you would hope to get, even though you have more volume. Hopefully you're not gonna increase your overhead. They're still projecting a loss next year, so it's, things we should keep close eyes on, in my mind.
And I do know when I talk to them during budget season, I know they they usually are, the number that they used to budget with generally tends to be lower than what they personally project. I know that they've said they want to make sure that they're not over projecting rounds. I know if you look at actual rounds the last 2 or 3 years, they've come in far above where they've projected. And so when they do their budget, I know they tend to budget quite conservatively in that way so that they don't try to over project revenues if possible.
To me, it all hopefully would seem to make sense, and if it is performing better, you would hope that that profit, if there was any, would support a position, and that we're not just adding a position to increase the loss.
correct.
Yeah, so I guess the item in front of you, though, is the
Like
golf management
is his
contract.
contract, yeah.
Well, so I just want to bring something up. So the contract says, and I'm on 214 with Maggie. Manages food and beverage services, plan menus, maintains inventory, serves as food safety manager. But a number of years back, we hired at city expense somebody to do that.
Correct, we
have
currently
a
have
food-
somebody who kind of heads food and beverage.
Right, but
And
that's supposed to be
I
in
guess
that.
when you say city, at the golf course's expense, I know when you say city expense, some people might think taxpayer, but yes, so the city as an entity, regardless of where that revenue is coming from, is the one who has the food and beverage person on.
Right,
payroll.
but as we try to move forward and not cut them a check for $100-some thousand every year to make them flush, it would also be nice for the taxpayer to, if they do get into the solid black and are able to pay all their bills without our transfer from our general fund into their checking account, it'd be nice to take some of that money back and then provide that to the taxpayers as well as an operation entity, just like, well, I mean, if we talk about our enterprise funds, where we not only do we provide something, but we also maintain it and add
Well,
to it and expand on it and.
And I know, I mean, I think that's certainly a goal. I think the food and beverage is actually one of the highlights over there at this point. Over the last couple of years, that more than any
Probably
other part
has
of the golf
done
course
more.
has expanded and grown. And I think that I think this year they had actually very little catering they actually did. They were able to handle most of it in-house, which saw that those revenues coming back instead of going straight back out. So I do know that they are certainly experimenting and always trying to come up with ways to increase revenues basically without hitting the expenditure side as hard. And they've been able to do that with food and beverage over the last year especially.
Right, but if we're paying people at city expense to do that, the contract should maybe even be going down because there's less and less responsibility.
So I guess that is certainly an argument to be had. I'm just stating that,
I know the golf board approved
that
it.
basically the food and beverage position has more than paid for itself.
Right, as the council rep on the golf board, and I know the golf board, they're about the golf club. We're about the bigger picture and the overall management of it. So there is a difference. I mean, they have kind of their own.
I mean, I
they're
think
all
there's
members, they all wanted the
I
best.
mean,
for
I think
person.
there certainly is, but they come with their recommendations for stuff, like we've placed them on the board to do. At some point, you either take their recommendations or you don't. I would say if you get to a point where you're not taking any of their recommendations, then you'd start questioning, do we just need to have the golf board be the city council too? I mean, they're like a lot of things, like planning commission or the EDA, like they kind of take a specific focus. That way our council meetings don't last for 8 hours at a pop to answer every single decision across the city too. So.
Right, but we still have, as the overseeing authority, we still have the ability to say no.
Oh, you
Or
certainly
we
do.
cannot do this, or we can't do that. I mean,
Correct.
if you're at General Mills and R&D wants $8 million, but the board says, well, we can only give you 6, that's what it is.
Oh,
So-
for certain.
So that's, I'm just wondering if the intent of where the contract initially was, and we're adding more and more people at city staff to take away from the management part of it, that contract should be staying flat or possibly even going down as other people that the taxpayers are paying for are doing it.
Probably, and I think maybe that'd be a good conversation to have with the golf board. Because their recommendation was to move forward with this contract.
Right, I get that. And again, I just want to reiterate that
Yep.
they're about the golf club. And we still have the ability to say no or yes, or maybe it's up to the point where we can get, if we're paying for all these other employees, that maybe somebody else will do the management contract
Yep.
for much cheaper, saving the taxpayer.
And I guess I will say, when you say they're all about the golf club, I think they certainly are, but I think they're about successfully running the golf club.
Oh,
And
I'm not
they
questioning
believe
that.
this contract helps to successfully run the golf club.
Right.
Well, I also think that we should be talking about this contract a little bit sooner, so that we can take a look at the scope of services and really determine who is doing what. It's one thing to have oversight of, let's say, the food service, versus what it says here is that they're actually, the manager's gonna plan menus and maintain a inventory, which I would probably guess that's not happening. So we need to really kind of zero in on the scope of services and lock it down to specifically what that individual manager is doing. So if we can try to have that conversation sooner rather than later would be,
I will pass
Good.
that on to the board.
thank you.
Okay,
And I've been on a golf board years ago, and I've kind of been familiar with the golf board for many years. So some golf boards are very in tune and experienced in the financial part, and some are the best golfers you've ever met. So it's different things that different people bring to it. But I think our city administrator and our city council really have to be the people that oversee the financial and the budgeting, and at least be more in tune to it. Because this is a retail operation similar to the fitness center that we depend upon a revenue coming in from not taxpayers, but from the sale or the service that we provide. So it's a little different. And so I think that we have to kind of be in line with the golf board as far as if we're going to do an analysis of this contract. I don't think we can just, I think it's the city council's responsibility to see what is the way we should be managing it. Is it still through contract basis, or do we look at a different provider or whatever? I think Kurt's done a great job. He's got strengths and weaknesses just like anyone else, and we can certainly look at that, but I would want to walk with the golf board on it, not just say, what's your opinion, and we're going to react to it. Because most places will take the path of the least resistance and say things are going good, and we should just keep it. And I'm not, by any way, I think the golf board's been active, and I think has done a good job as far as I can tell. I don't want to diminish that in any way, but. So I think if we want to look at it in the summer or sometime well before and start looking at, this is what we got, should we readjust this contract? Should we look at what do other providers, what do other golf courses do? We're in a better position to try to manage that kind of a survey than the people on the golf board, I think, but.
Yeah, and I can certainly pass that along, and we can put it on our list of to-dos for 24 if that's something the council wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the, the contract is a bit high level, and you just need to understand the division of responsibilities and who's doing what. Whether it's a city employee or the manager.
Are you gonna be at tomorrow night's meeting, Josh?
I was not initially planning on it.
Okay. I can ask questions there too, yeah, but.
All right, so, in front of us, we have the agreement to approve, or whatever. So I would take a motion to approve the contract.
Just to clarify, has it always been to Kurt personally? He's not set up a
I
separate company?
believe, and this is what, this predates me, so Sean might be no better. I believe up Kurt personally being the sole
Kurt was
employee-
paid by the
being the
management
sole
company
employee of this
initially.
LLC, I believe was just the last 3 or 4 years. I think before that, there were 2,
Yeah.
members of the LLC.
Yeah,
So the contract's to him personally, not to an LLC?
Well, so it's to an LLC, but I
Golf
believe he's the
Professional
only employee
Enterprises.
of that LLC.
Oh, because I thought it said his name there.
Well, he signed it.
He signs it,
As
but
owner.
it is, to Professional Enterprises LLC.
Golf Professional Enterprises.
Oh,
Way at the,
Yeah.
right
Make
before the
sure-
exhibit.
Where did I see that? Because it seemed to strike a chord with me why it was written that way, but.
I can certainly.
Page
Oh, I'm sorry. Its
211.
services will be provided by the person. Okay. We spell out who the person is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, right here. Okay, does somebody want to offer the motion to approve this contract?
I'm sorry, Mayor, was there a motion and you're looking for a second?
No, I don't think there was a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Bruce made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion made by Bruce, seconded by Maggie. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, now we're up to golf fleet vehicles.
Yes, this is another one that we discussed here, about a month ago. Basically, the current fleet from the, golf carts is, I believe, going to be going on their 7th year now. And I think the wear and tear on them, from constant use is, getting to a point where it's making more sense to look at trading them in. The golf club did receive ultimately 4 quotes from 3 different companies for trading them in. And I've got those in the memo there, with trade-in ranging anywhere from 184.4 to 247.02. This is certainly a difference than what we were originally seeing in the CIP that we've been working with for the last few years from them. I think some of that comes down to, after looking at the amount of times that they basically have had to go out and acquire, usually through lease or rent, another 10 carts or so, that they want to up their fleet from 50 to 60. They've basically, they've got to usually up their fleet for a lot of their situations, so they'd like to get a hold of 60 carts instead of 50, which they did last time, which will raise the price. Plus, I think just the general inflation of stuff has raised it from 120. They are recommending going with the club car at 184.4. So that would be about a $360,000 total price with a trade-in of $175,000 to club car. So I know, speaking with Kurt, that he certainly recommends club car both for their price and for our current staff's experience with the vehicles. So that is the recommendation for the golf carts. They are also asking for Authorization to purchase 2 utility vehicles at a total of $28,500. I've included those 2 quotes also in the packet. Ultimately, they are asking that we get out an equipment certificate payable over 5 years for these. The payments would likely land somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 a year for those 5 years. And I did include the current debt payments on the Gulf's books that completely fall off in 27. So I'm assuming that payments on these wouldn't even start until 25, which at this point, the payment that they've got currently on the books of 25 is about 67,000. So are there any questions at this point?
I do. Why didn't we, I mean, with all of our other equipment, we kind of stagger it out, police cars and whatnot.
Yeah.
Why all of this all at once, especially this year when we're looking at large increases because of inflation and COLAs and whatnot?
So they did not do any last year. If you remember right, the year before last year, they did, I think, get almost, was it about $200,000? I think they picked up like 5 mowers or 5 different mowers.
Yep, we did.
And so when you look at their CIP, which is coming, they certainly have a list of equipment and they do try to spread it out. I think they try to keep all the golf carts on basically one lineup. That way you're working with 50 or 60 of the exact same cart. I'm assuming for maintenance purposes, then you know you work on the exact same cart for all of them. You don't necessarily have your good carts in your fleet and your bad carts in your fleet. I would assume there's advantages to keeping all your carts at the same age. And then so I do think they've spread them out. They just, I know last year didn't request any equipment, and I don't know what exactly next year's is going to look like. But if you do look at their CIP, I mean, it is spread out quite a bit like we try to keep the cities as well.
So did I don't know if we ever got how many tournaments where they have to actually go out and get additional carts?
That, I mean, I don't have that number off the top of my head, no.
Because, I mean, it would only be for the big tournaments, I would guess. And we're still gonna have to do that because even 60 won't fulfill.
Yeah, so I know, speaking to Kurt, the way he made it sound, more tournaments than not, they had to go out and get some carts. The reason why they're going from 50 to 60 is that 60 will cover most of those tournaments. I mean, the big ones, they certainly will still have to go out for additional carts over the top of 60. But he felt that 60 carts would get put to use for most of what the golf club has going on.
So looking at the CIP schedule, it doesn't appear that they have anything planned for a utility vehicle out to 2033. So why is it popping up now in 2024?
I can't answer that. I'm sorry that I'm the council person on the, as a matter of fact, in previous years, 25,000 was budgeted. This one's coming in at what? Oh, 26.5.
I mean, there's,
I think, you know, the general feeling that I got at the meetings was that they're gonna put it on there and they're looking, I think, for us to say, oh, well, we can't do that, or we can't do that much, or we can't do, and now looking at, you know, trying to move below the 4.8 million, which I would certainly like to do. These are things that we could shave off for this year.
right. The golf carts, they do have on the CIP, and they're actually coming in a little under the 186,000 for 2024, but the utility vehicles isn't anywhere on the radar. So I think, you know, they need to, the golf board needs to determine how to spread out those purchases, not, bring it forth when we don't even have it in CIP. Unless there's a dire need that we've got something that's broken down and it's just not usable anymore. I mean, if it's an emergency situation, but that's not what I'm reading. So I'm all for the club car purchase, because that falls within line, but not the utility vehicles.
And we're trading in 50, but we're buying 60.
Correct.
But we're still gonna have to, on the bigger tournaments, go out and get the extra ones anyways.
Correct. I mean, to get enough carts to handle the biggest tournaments, you're gonna have some carts that then just go unused for much of the year. And so, this was the balance to utilize the carts that we have and only have to go out, for the largest tournaments.
But we have to remember within those tournaments, there's and I don't know what the percentage is, and I don't know if it's ever been provided to me or discussed at the golf board, I can't recall it, but a lot of the bigger tournaments that are associated with high school, like the high school football one, basketball, baseball, whatever, basketball and wrestling, those are already members, and there's a good percentage of them that already have their own personal carts. And I've been told that they're worried if we have an additional 10 carts that are all ours, we have to store them, which is getting tougher and tougher as more and more people have their own carts and pay for storage in that shed. And then we have to upkeep them as well, too. I'm just wondering if we're trading in 50, if we just don't stick with 50, since we're only talking about a handful of.
I guess I cannot speak to the logistics of in-tournament in and out of golf cart usage.
Are these the same numbers that, like 2 months ago, the cost and the same numbers,
Yes,
everything?
that's correct.
And on your estimate for financing, is there a down payment or something put on it?
There is no current down payment. I do know that, as we've discussed, I'm conservatively estimating their fund balance is about $620 at the beginning of the year. So I think there's certainly space there if we wanted to do partial down payment and or, like I said, pay with cash or lease at this point. I know, I've just got basically the request coming out of there, and I do think that, with this request, it just kind of helps spread it out. So if for some reason they do have a down year, I mean, I know they'd have that hard payment then they'd have to make of the debt, but they would also have that cash that they would have spent otherwise on that down payment to help shield that down year. So,
Well, if you feel the payment's 45 to 50, I think that's the number that I assumed that we would be at. It would be a manageable number, because the goal in my mind is to try to manage the principal payments and get it to go down, so there's less financial risk to them and for the city to have to put less in every year. So that's where I was coming from. In the past few years, we usually piggybacked a bond issue, but this you're suggesting a separate financing?
nope, so this would be piggybacking on the 24 bond that
Oh, so you could hold off until then?
we'd do a refunding resolution like we've done in the past.
That makes sense then.
And yeah, so because I think they'd be looking at receiving these in March. Part of the bid was to be able to receive the carts before the golf season started.
So then the actual net amount, we can play with that number when it gets closer to the bond issue, if we want to require a down payment or equity or something.
Correct.
I think I would like to make sure we visit that at the time to make
Okay.
sure we look at their principal schedule going out and seeing what that could be in that. That would give some time to see where we're at with other issues and how they're doing for the year and things like that.
Okay.
I am a little surprised then with the number, because when we talked about it the last time, I don't think we talked about the two vehicles, and yet the payment's similar to what we talked about with just the golf carts.
So I think Kurt mentioned the two vehicles in passing during our enterprise meeting, he'd mentioned that there were 2 utility vehicles added on that they would like at that point. But I think that conversation was in passing. If you go back to the presentation from 2 meetings ago.
And I'm sorry, I didn't look at that invoice, so when we're talking about utility vehicles, are we talking about basically just like a 4x4?
Like Cushman, like,
Yeah, kind of your standard
Is that the- I was thinking-
two-wheel or 4-wheel with the box in the back.
I thought they needed a big mower in the next year. I can't recall the CIP. Was there a big mower in the mower?
I would have to look. I mean, I know we just picked up a big mower.
There's something coming up.
The 2024 on CIP were 2 leaf blowers, a pressure washer, and then a third of the stump grinder, and of course the golf carts.
In 2025, was there a?
25 was a rough mower.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's the big one.
Yep, for 68,000.
68,000. Well, I guess we can think about that later when we do the bond issue, because if we're gonna be considering that purchase, then we can balance whether down payment or pay cash for that. I'm not sure what else is for that year.
And,
The other big number.
and I will certainly get with Kurt and Jeff to make sure that the CIP is as updated as possible, because I know they've got quite a long list, and to make sure we're projecting out for things.
Yeah, this doesn't look like it's too accurate. It's a big list, but then there's nothing.
Robin, do you have the golf budget right in front of you? I mean, could you tell us how much the golf board, or the golf course paid for the rentals last year? Is that number, is that a line item number?
I don't think it's gonna be a separate code, but I can look up, try quickly.
I'm sorry
by
for throwing that on you. I thought maybe it might be
vendor.
a separate line item. If you can't find it, it's not a big deal. I can bring it up at tomorrow's board meeting.
No, I can
at the
try to
golf
find it
board
by the
meeting.
time we're, done tonight. So I just have to play around if anybody happen to know what vendor we pay for that. But, okay,
I'm just curious what they had for projected on that. If
Okay.
we're only gonna do it for just the very biggest ones, and we're gonna save all this money.
so you wanna know what they actually paid or what?
I wanna know what they
projected?
paid last year,
Okay,
so then
that's
we
what I
can at
thought.
least have it as a compare, and how they line item that
Okay.
out or whatever. How much money we're gonna save by not doing that, if we buy 10 extra carts. Cause I think at $6,000 a cart, even if we cut 10 carts and just went with the 50 again, we could, there's $60,000. We might be able to pull $100,000 out of the golf board budget, just to.
I don't know if it'd be I mean, you'd just cut a third of the cost of the carts out by taking out a sixth, so I don't know if there's 6.
That's with the trade-in, so we're only trading.
Oh, yeah,
I'm taking
okay.
the 10 that we're
Yep.
not getting a trade-in for.
Yeah, you're right,
The difference between the 50 and the 60, so.
Okay, so what do we wanna do with this?
Well, if we have the ability to look at it and change.
No, I know,
Yeah.
so do we wanna table it, or?
Well, yeah, so this isn't a look and change, like, they are asking for authorization to purchase 60 carts and trade in the existing 50, and to purchase 2 utility carts.
Yeah, which,
So you're recommending that we table it?
well, no, I was just asking you guys, my thing is that all of a sudden these two utility carts come out of nowhere, and it's like,
Yeah, that's
it's just
another
not good planning.
$26,000 we-
And they want to bond for the club cars and the utility vehicles.
Correct.
Well, if they've got
Well, I don't know that they're actually making that decision about bonding. That's really never been the golf board's
right.
bailiwick. That's usually been our city administrator that deals with all the financial parts of it. So I'm assuming you're saying you want.
I know when I was looking, I mean, I basically, when I was looking at their numbers, like that, yes. So if you wanna get down to it, like, I would recommend that we bond
Okay.
for those pieces at this point. I certainly get the argument of paying cash at some point because we do have cash. I also want to make sure that that cash balance doesn't dip too low, and not being a golf course connoisseur per se, I don't know where that magic sweet spot is for what that fund balance should be.
But we certainly know we'll have the end of the year behind us by that time, so we know what, we'll
Correct.
be in a better position to make that judgment.
Okay.
Well, at this time, I'm not in favor of the utility vehicles. And maybe that can be looked at if it becomes a necessity.
Is that a separate order,
I believe they are two separate orders, yes.
separate bids?
Yeah, Cushman.
And you're not familiar with that, Sean, the two things?
No, I just know that we talked about a lot of extra equipment that if, again, I would take the stand that a lot of times they ask for things to throw it in there, but if it doesn't get passed, it doesn't get passed.
So then it's not a necessity, it's just something nice to have.
Yeah, well, and I can find that answer out tomorrow. And I can maybe get a little bit more information to report back the following Monday, or what day is it? The
Tuesday.
27th, Tuesday.
Or Tuesday, Wednesday, some.
Sounds like there's a
I'll say
time.
the next regular meeting would be January 2nd.
No, but on our 27th meeting, our levy.
So generally on special meetings, unless it's on the agenda, you're not supposed to talk about it
Yeah.
per se.
Yeah, I mean, it has
But-
to be on the agenda.
Yeah, so like
So
the
otherwise we
purchase
can-
of vehicles wouldn't be on the agenda unless we want to put it on there.
So come January 2nd, we could theoretically say no, and then we just have extra money or it wouldn't go into the bond.
Yeah, I mean, see, there would just be money in the budget that would then not be spent.
When you say no, are you saying no about the Cushman things, or the number of golf carts, or what are you referring to when you say that?
Well, a little of both. The utility carts or the Cushmans, which kind of popped up, that was $26,000. And then I'm just wondering about the 50 that we're trading in, the 10 over that. If they're roughly $6,000 a cart, that's another $60,000. Theoretically, we could save $86,500, not even including the assistant manager part that we haven't really, that we might want to look at that as well. We could drop the levy a whole nother point, because that'd be over.
Well, and again, this isn't levy.
It's not levy, but big picture wise, you're right. I keep saying that, but we could drop our expenses.
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
But this is a pretty old request. This is well over 2 months ago that they got this bid, right?
Yeah,
I believe so.
October, it's October 13th.
So I don't know if is there a sense of urgency or expiration of the bid?
I don't know of the exact expiration. I do know that Kurt asked me just last week when the council's gonna make a decision so we could get back to people. So I'd assume that at some point, they're gonna say that the bid's not good anymore and we're gonna have to give you a new bid. I don't
Yeah,
know
we
what
had
that
time,
is.
they understood they must deal with a lot of cities, I'm guessing, that have municipal courses, they understand the process. So I believe the bid was good for, I can't say per se a specific date. I'll make that in my notes here to find out, but
Well, I just
they knew that they.
concerned that it's not the end of the year.
Right, but we could theoretically have Kurt an answer by, well, I don't know if we have to put it on that
We would just have to put it on the agenda
for
Tuesday.
January 2nd.
Or
for-
if we need it on the 27th, you would just add it to the 27th agenda.
Right.
We'd have until 3 days before that meeting to change anything on that agenda.
I'm supportive of the golf cart as it's presented. The Cushman thing, I can understand if that needs to be looked at again later or address that later, but Sean, if you feel that you need to have a go at the golf board about the golf carts, that's up to the
We-
council to decide, but I guess.
We can, either decide to purchase the golf carts or table it.
I do have an update on the rentals, if
Okay.
that's gonna,
Yeah,
Thank you.
So it looks like primarily, when we're renting for those tournaments, it's through Versatile Vehicles. Last year, 2022, we only budgeted, or the golf course budgeted 5,500. They spent 10,651. So this year they budgeted 10,000 and spent 10,631. I just pulled up one invoice, so I did not go through each different one. But for this invoice, it was $55 a car per day, and then a delivery fee as well, so.
So the difference between 23 and 24, they were both 10,000?
About 10,000, yeah, mid-10, 10,500, 10,600.
Okay, let's just, yeah, just easy math, 10,500. But they still have almost the exact same budgeted for 24, even though we're getting them 10 extra carts.
No, I think it was 22
Is
and
that-
23, correct?
I gave you 22 budget and actuals compared
I'm-
to 23 budget and actuals.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, 22.
And then do we recoup that on the rental of the car?
On the, yeah, I'm just saying though, so what do they have budgeted for 24 then? For Versatile Vehicles? Because we still know we're gonna have to rent some for the bigger tournament.
They did drop it to 6,000.
To 6,000, okay, thank you. And we're, the math is right direction.
And for the club car, the estimate, I'm not seeing any verbiage on here that we have to submit an order by any particular date.
Yeah, I didn't see any either. I think,
I'll find that out tomorrow night.
yeah, and then I think we table this.
Matter of fact, I could text the superintendent, maybe get the answer.
So I get, what is the wish of the whole council? Because you guys have all kind of been across the board on what you'd like to do with these golf carts.
I'd like to find some more information, if we could
Yeah,
table it to the 27th.
I would like to
that'd be
table it to-
Great.
well, yeah, 27th or even the 2nd.
I'll agree, the utility carts that popped up are
Yeah,
definitely something that,
you know, I guess,
unless they can explain a definite need to me, maybe tomorrow night, then I can report back to the other board members.
that would be great.
Why don't you make a motion, since we're not in agreement, so we can have it outlined that way then?
Okay, so you make a motion.
To what?
The motion would be to table
To
it,
table
if
it.
that's what your motion wants to be.
Yeah,
Okay, I make a motion that we table it until the 27th, and hopefully we can have these answers on the utility carts and possibly look at the other 10 additional carts and when the contract would have to be in by, so we don't, that might give us some time to discuss more. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to make that
No,
motion.
that's
in a
okay.
weird way.
No, but I understand. Does everybody understand that?
Motion would be to table it until
Yeah.
a later date.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion fails. Right?
My understanding, yes, a 2-2
Yep.
motion would need at least, you guys would need at least 3 votes to move a motion forward.
Yep, so.
So we're not tabling it, so now we're gonna vote on, to
The,
vote on the actual contract and how it's
Correct.
proposed.
One or both of them, like
Yeah.
you vote, I would recommend, it sounds like voting on them separately.
You mean the utility vehicles
Yes.
and the golf carts?
yes.
Okay.
So then I would take a motion on the, purchase of the golf carts, net purchase price of $184,400. For the New Prague Golf Club.
I make a motion to approve the purchase as is presented of no more than, that, give Sean a chance to try to talk it down if you can.
Okay,
I'll second.
Maggie seconds it.
No more than 60, right?
No more than what was presented.
Yeah.
Presented, okay.
Yep, exactly.
I can live with that, then.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, I will, since it was a no more than motion, my understanding of that motion was that Sean will go back and talk to them tomorrow night
To see,
to see about bringing it potentially down. Am I understanding that motion correct, or was that for 60
Yeah,
cars?
we're authorizing the golf board to make a purchase of no more than.
Okay.
Okay. And now comes the two versatile, or the two Cushman vehicles, the two utility haulers, whatever you wanna call them.
I make a motion to table that request.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. All right. Next item is the compensation pay plan 2024.
Okay, yes, so this compensation plan, has, been the one that we've generally been discussing with the COLA and STEP since August. And per the discussions we've had, there is a 4% adjustment to all non-union positions for 2024. And this amount is included in the 24 budget.
Oops. All right. So with that, is there questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion for that approval of the compensation pay plan for 2024.
I have a highlight on some of mine, but I don't know if that just got in there by error when I pushed some button.
For the memo or the plan?
The schedule.
No, I mean, there's some,
I'll say that there's a green line going across
Yep.
the top and like one green line going down.
You have no blue highlights in yours? Okay,
Yeah, just at the very top.
it's just my big fingers, I think.
okay.
You touched something here. That's good.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Maggie made the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, Bruce made the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next item is the 2024 visioning document.
Yes, this is the visioning document
Yep.
that I've been sharing with you guys. Made a couple updates per our discussion last time, including adding the compensation study to 2025. Other than that, it's much the same with me just kind of updating stuff on the front end and back end with completing of projects this year.
Okay, do we have to approve that, or is that more of an informational, because to me, I look at this as a working document.
Right.
It's certainly a working document. I guess I would recommend approval at least, so that way, if anybody asks for some reason,
Okay.
the things that we're working on, these are the kind of the things that city council has outlined at
Yep.
this point. As a reminder, out on the city share drive, I do add quarterly kind of updates with where the document currently stands at various project levels, so.
Okay. I know we got this last week and we got it again, so if nobody has any questions or additions, I would take a motion to approve this visioning document for 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2024 visioning document.
Okay, there's been a motion, is there a second? I'll second it. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the 2024 through 2033 capital improvement plan.
Yes, so this is the document that we've seen much of. We did have a few updates here, before our meeting last week. We kind of talked about those a little bit. Namely adding some stuff to the police department that hadn't been in there prior. But other than that, the document really remains unchanged from last week. Just as a general reminder, this does not formally approve any of these purchases. And especially some of these big ones, like we'll see them again to say, hey, we're ready to do this and go out for this.
It's just a plan.
It is certainly, yeah, it gives a staff a plan to work with and an idea of, especially when we approach budget season, of what we should be working on getting in there.
Okay. All right, with that, I would take a motion to approve this plan.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
There's been a motion by Maggie, seconded by Bruce. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I think the golf course needs to do a little bit more on their end.
Yes, I've got it in my notes to talk to them already.
Thank you. Okay, then the personnel policy handbook updates, is this the, new state requirement stuff that we all,
Yep, this is the update from the Department of Labor. As you saw, Josh is better with time than me a couple weeks ago, month ago. So we've continued to kind of put a pause on putting something official out for your consideration because the Department of Labor continued to try to address questions from employers after the legislation came out. So even here at the beginning of December and throughout December, they've been updating their website to try to address questions and concerns that employers had. So we were working with ABDO on their human resources and like employment specialty side, and had a small group from peer-sized cities get together and kind of work through some things. Came up with a proposal kind of from a template that ABDO suggested, and then went back to them with some questions on how it fit into our handbook specifically. So this update brings in two things: a change to the vacation accrual, and then the addition of the emergency sick and safe time. The accrual of vacation, how we're going to implement it upon your approval, January 1 actually coincides nicely with how the emergency sick and safe time accrual works as well. So you have a track changes copy. Red with a strike through is being omitted, and then blue with an underline is being added. Bruce, it's not a play on your eyes here, those highlighted areas. That was if there was a comment. On my copy, I wanted to kind of keep our comments back and forth, but wanted to omit it to, as you guys didn't need to keep seeing some of our working copy stuff, but I could not remove that highlight unless I accepted the edit, so that's just a formatting thing for right now. So this goes into place January 1st, and we're presenting it to you this evening so that we can get out employee notices as we're required to do so prior to January 1.
and I think going back to Sean's question a couple of weeks ago, this is just what the law's requiring, no more, no less.
Right, yep, we're just meeting the standard. What this is doing for full-time is essentially reallocating a portion of vacation time that becomes allowable and acceptable under the ESST law. And then we are required for staff that meet the certain criteria of annual hours, whether they're seasonal, part-time, or temporary, then we are giving them the 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, again, according to law.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
So I think I asked earlier about, just to clarify that, we are, I'm not sure about the wording, but we are using the accrued as earned method, not the front load or front end 48 or front end 80
So we're
method.
doing it a couple different ways depending on the employee type. So for full-time, we are doing the front loading, which again, that coincides with our change in the vacation accrual for January 1 as proposed. For part-time, seasonal, or temporary, we're doing the accrual method. So,
Well, my understanding, if we choose the front end, and just because we front end vacation, that's kind of the words are used in a different context than what this law says, so I'm not sure we need to think of it the same way.
okay.
But if we use the front end, then we're guaranteeing if they don't use it, we have to pay at the end of each year for the front end 48, don't we?
Well, so again, separating the employee types, for full-time, vacation can be carried over for 80 hours every year if that's what somebody still has in their bank. So full-time would still be allowed to carry over 80, but not cash out.
But I think the law requires you to pay it at the end of each year for the front end 48.
And I think that depended on how much so like if you if you were going to pay out at the end of the year, I believe it was 80 hours, correct? If you allowed them to carry over, then it was 48 hours a year. Or
Well, there's three methods you can use. The accrued is earned, the front end 48, and the front end 80. And the front end 48, 40, and 80, there's different requirements at the end of the year. But for the 48, I believe it's pretty sure you actually have to pay them at the end of the year if they don't use it. Actually pay them cash.
And we can certainly, because we can certainly look at it, because that was conversations we had of how could we best fit this into our current system.
Right.
And that is kind of how we came up with this, fitting it into the vacation, because we already were allowing 80 hours of vacation to roll over. And so I thought that we'd worked with ABO to basically,
Yeah.
this system that we proposed will fit in there nicely without actually affecting our current vacation allotment at all.
Well, if you could verify that then, because that's
We-
just my understanding of it working with other.
We can certainly verify, and then that's why we
Because-
chose a different allotment for the part-time, because we felt that like it worked better without us having to pay out sick time at the end of the year, while basically allowing them to carry it over, but they would have to be here for quite a long time to build up a large quantity of it, if that makes sense, so they couldn't just take a month off.
And I apologize not for reading in detail what you sent us, but I looked at the other stuff quite detailed. So I don't know if you actually spell out the different people have different method that we're using for different people.
Yes.
Does it say front end
It's
48?
basically based on full-time and or everybody else.
I mean,
And
do we
so-
actually say we're using the front end 48 here and we're doing the front end 80 over here?
Or however that ends up spelling out, yes.
We're using that terminology?
Full-time employees, this is works for
Full-time
them.
48 or full-time 80? It's specific in the law, that's why I'm saying it that way.
So for full-time, we are trying to have it mirror the current vacation policy as much as possible.
Right.
And simply adding in I'll call it the flexibility of usage for vacation time would meet the law, and not trying to go and restate, here's the ESST law
Right,
in
right.
vacation, just kind of open it up for the flexibility. So you're not gonna see the specific, like, you'll get 48, which is your portion of ESST, and then you'll get this portion, which is vacation. We're just trying to blanket that whole vacation pool as ESST. And then towards the bottom of the edits, you'll see that it references part-time, seasonal, and temporary. And then it outlines, this is how much you'd earn, 1 hour per 30, and with no payout.
I totally get what you're trying to do, and I support what you're doing. I just want to make sure that if we're not intending to pay someone else, pay them out their vacation at the end of the year, that we have it set up so it doesn't do that. Because,
We can certainly double check again, but I know that was what we made clear to APDO when we told them what we wanted.
Okay.
And worked with their person to put
I'm
this
just
together.
referencing the League of Minnesota Cities
Yep.
thing
Yep.
I read, so.
Yeah, so there's, as you're mentioning, Bruce, there's the basic accrual method, a front load method with a payout, and a front load with no payout method. So
So
ABDO.
that's the 80 then.
Yep, granted 80 hours, but unused PTO is not paid out or carried forward, and it would be our decision as the employer, from what I understand, if we chose to pay out or carry forward, like we do with vacation for the carry forward. But that's, that front load is not what we're doing for part-time, seasonal, or temporary.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said, but I'm just not trying to be anal about it, but that one method, the front end 88, it's a legal requirement that you pay it out. It's not a choice.
There's one that is a payout, and then a front load with no payout method.
Right. Okay.
I think we're saying the same thing.
I just remember when I looked at the video, the league, that said they made a point of talking about those three methods and what difference they would make, and if you
Sure.
really don't want to do it.
So did you feel like part of the language that we were proposing did not meet that? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm just referencing my memo I sent you, detailing the questions, and you said you're going to get back to Abdu, I think.
Yep, and this
and we're gonna
actually
get
has
back.
been updated since that
Okay.
original statement. I think when I gave that to you guys, based on the template they had provided and using the flow chart I'm looking at right now, I had proposed my edits to Abdo, but I hadn't heard back from them
Okay.
yet. I heard back from them, and that's what this update is with their
Edits.
yes, with their edits, so,
No, I'm comfortable with it. If you
Okay.
feel that everything is done, that there's no front-end 48 or front-end payout, then that's the only issue
Yep.
I have.
And it's a lot of words, it's a lot of language, especially when we're trying to separate the employee groups a little bit. So, but from what we read and what we understand with our support from ABDO is we're meeting that intent, so.
Sounds great. It's too bad that they kind of rush this in. A requirement by the end of the year.
Well, they both give you 6 months and then they give you information about 3 weeks before you have to have it done. So,
Right.
Okay, with, I think, questions answered, I would take a motion to approve the personnel policy handbook updates. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Sean made the second. Are there any other questions for discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, now we're down to the miscellaneous stuff. Anything discussion not on the agenda? Otherwise, I'll start going around the horn. Matt, do you have anything?
Okay, I got two things. Last week I received a letter of resignation from a waste treatment plant operator, so I'll be looking to advertising for that. Hopefully within a month we'll start interviews, is the plan. Is trying to give people some time over the holidays to get some, hopefully some applications in. Second thing is, just like to get the feel of the council for starting to do some renovations at the new park shop, the west building. I would like to start looking at insulating, stuff like that. I think I originally told you $75,000 is what I think it will cost. I was a little off. We're looking closer to that 80 to 84-ish, the quotes I got. And that is where I'm at right now.
When were you gonna start the work? Wanted to start the work?
I would start it this winter. A lot of the stuff we're doing internally, we're gonna do a lot of the installation ourselves. I'll have to hire an electrician to come in. Those are the two big items to do, the heating and stuff like that. I can't do that myself.
So it's really, the majority of that increase would probably be material costs is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I will say the installation came in higher than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
About 10 grand more than I expected it to be.
But city staff will do as much as they can.
Oh, for sure, yeah. We're gonna actually insulate all the walls ourselves. I'm hiring someone I would like to hire someone to insulate the ceiling, because I like to do that spray foam. But yeah, for the most part, the east side, we redid the whole break room / meeting room. We did that all internally. We didn't hire anything out.
Right.
So that is our objective always, is to do everything internally.
Okay.
So if you guys still feel comfortable, I'd like to move forward with that.
That was in the budget as a use of funds, or how is that being funded?
Yeah, so that was, and it kind of in the budget as, we talked about using the 1.5 million funds, similar to purchasing the building, those same funds. It wouldn't affect our levy at all.
I support it.
Yeah,
Move ahead
I'm
with it.
fine.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Chief,
I'm good.
okay, Bruce?
Good also.
Okay. Ken? Robin?
Let's talk about ESST. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to add, a couple weeks ago, we had the auditors on site for their preliminary field work. So just always a reminder of our cycle that about a month or so prior to the fiscal year end, auditors start to do their field work to try to get anything done that they can. And then they'll come back probably around February or March and do their field work and wrap things up. So our office does a lot of prep work, and particularly Leah Stender in my office communicates a lot with them. So they always appreciate our high level of organization during prelim to help things go smoothly.
They passed that on to me.
They did? Oh, that's good. Yes, the mayor met with them as well, so that's good.
So, yep.
Thanks for sharing that. That's all. Oh, you have a microphone?
Josh?
I don't have anything else right now, no.
Okay. Maggie?
Nothing.
Sean?
No.
I don't. Bruce?
Just the police chief, I was gonna mention, I was at a school board meeting, they introduced or talked about their newborn community ed program and thank the New Prague Police for being involved, and that's kind of a community collaboration of sorts. It's a school program, but there's a lot of community, different people involved in it, and one of which is our police department, and I'm not sure what role you're doing, maybe it's just the seats, car seats are part of it.
We had two of our officers that went to, two of our officers went to, the safety certification to be able to install and inspect those seats. So we can do those things in the community because people ask for it quite frequently, and we knew that this program was coming up through that program with community ed. So yeah, it's been a good experience for us and working with the community. So it's been fun. The officers have enjoyed doing it so far, so.
I know that was one of your things that you wanted to try to get more community involvement, so I'm glad that this is one that you're working on.
Yep, that's great.
Then I'm just wondering what your reaction to the comments about the drug and the trend of drug, how do you describe that, criminal activity or presence? What is your reaction to the presence and the trend line, if that's different, or if you see something, is a normal trend, or is it blooped up, or?
No, I can agree with what John had presented. I agree that it is trending upward, and especially regionally. So when you look at our task forces that we're a part of, it's a regional collaboration to try and keep drugs out of our region. So there are drugs in our area that end up in New Prague from the area, right? So to say that we have someone that just does drug work in New Prague wouldn't be as efficient as to have a task force that responds to different places and goes where the need is, right? So what we're trying to do is prevent the drugs from getting into other communities, and they do that by targeting through tips and targeting areas that they know drugs are happening and sales and overdoses and things are happening to prevent those drugs then from coming into our community. So we have seen an uptick in it. We've probably worked more with that task force in the last year than we have previously. I think to John's point that with their staffing levels and things that are starting to come in, there are drugs go in trends where they'll get shipments from different areas of the country. So they're very good at tracking those things and keeping us up to date with what we're seeing and what to look for. So.
Do you see that there's any influence that the change in the marijuana law is going to have on the trend or anything, or is that just not really correlated to what this task force does?
I guess until we have some time to put that data together, it's so new that it's hard to put a trend line on that right now because it's so new. But he talked a lot about the fentanyl, and that's still a big problem. I know to combat that we've incorporated Narcan, so we have Narcan to. If someone does overdose on fentanyl, we have that very accessible to us with the officers and in the cars. So I think to answer your question, I think it's too early to tell if there's any correlation there or not, but I think it'll be interesting to look at that as the marijuana laws kind of sort themselves out here and we get some direction from the Office of Cannabis and they come up with some guidelines and direction as to where they're going to go with what that looks like.
That's all I got. How are we coming on the hiring? Are we fully staffed yet?
We're currently at 10 and authorized for 12. Still taking applications. We did a couple of interviews last week, and we are doing a background on one of those candidates right now. So again, the struggle continues. I think the last time I looked, there were 212 jobs in Minnesota. So we're competing with everyone right now.
How's staffing been with 10?
We manage, right? We set the number at 12 so we could be as efficient as we can, right? So we've gotten better at doing things, but to cover vacations and time off and to have that work-life balance, 12 is our number to have those teams. And for that to make sense, I think when we get to that 12, we'll be in a much better spot to do that and accommodate and kind of keep down the overtime as well.
Have you had to cut shifts or anything, or reduce patrolling, or?
Well, if someone takes off essentially what we're doing now is, we're covering that with another shift, so we're essentially not having an extra car on. So we're short one, so we always have somebody on, but maybe not to the number that we would like to have.
Okay.
Okay. All right, if there isn't anything else, I take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We do have a special meeting after this, so just.
Okay.
Okay.